Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to talk about the biggest hot shots and have nots of the last couple of weeks. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, the ally for whom I would gladly die, Blake Creamer. Blake, how are you feeling tonight?
Oh, God, you'll never have to do that, buddy. All right, I'll never let it happen. Okay, we stick together on this. Nate and I have synergy, folks. That's never gonna die. All right. Sorry, I was caught off guard. Nate changed up the rhyme at the last minute and didn't clue me in, so I didn't know how to react. I'm doing good, buddy. It was a really good, fun Sunday today. We actually took the kids over to an aquarium here on Vancouver Island. It was really fun. Yeah, it's just I love things like that where you can just sort of let the kids loose and they're just looking at stuff and learning about stuff. And yeah, it's pretty fun. We got to see an octopus and I got to touch the suction cup. So, yeah, that's kind of what happened today. I don't know. What about you, buddy? How was your day?
It was pretty good. Yeah, the wife and I got away, left the kids with the grandparents, went to the Niagara region, did some ice wine tasting. Basically, it's like wine, it's just super sweet.
And really cold.
And cold, yes. That's the two major features of ice wine, as I'm told. But yeah, it was good to get away, do something different, get away from the normal day to day.
The
That
children.
being said, mostly.
Yeah, really. Get away from the children.
But that being said, I am ready to get back into some routine here and get into some newsies. Let's get into it. Seth Jones traded to the Panthers off the top. Matthew Tkachuk placed on LTIR to facilitate this trade. I've got to think that means Tkachuk is like, it's not happening this year. Like, he's not coming back till playoffs. Otherwise, I think they would have some pretty major cap problems, the way I'm reading this. But Seth Jones in Florida, where does he come into the picture? To my mind, like, Ekblad is not like I've said this before. Ekblad is not a guy who like stirs up a lot of love in my mind for power play one time. It's not a guy that I would trust there if I had a better option. You saw they tried not to do that this year with Adam Boakfist, and he was just too much of a problem to roster, and so they moved away from him and said, "Okay, I guess Ekblad can do it." Now you got Seth Jones coming in, who's run a power play one for as long as he can remember. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that Seth Jones becomes the power play one guy for the Florida Panthers, and that could be a really, really big role for him. Possibly the best offensive role he's ever had, right? I think it's actually more interesting to think about where he fits in at even strength because Ekblad and Forsling has been appearing for so long. And also, on the second pair, Mikkola and Kulikov have been a pair for so long. Does Seth Jones fit in on the second pair there? Do they put him down on the third pair? How many minutes is this guy actually going to see, even if he gets power play one? I think that part is kind of interesting. I'll let you weigh in there, Blake.
Yeah, I think if you trade for a player the caliber of Seth Jones, like what he's capable of doing, he's a big minute defenseman. I think a much better defenseman than Aaron Ekblad. You know, for being honest, this guy, he does things just a lot better. I think Ekblad's kind of a one-note guy. Like he's a big-time shooter from the back end, but in terms of actual defense, like Ekblad's not really ringing the bell there. So I think Seth Jones will probably get that second pairing with Mikkola. I would think, but I'm excited about the power play opportunity. I think it is going to be Seth Jones, but obviously we got to wait and see. But I just think Ekblad on the back end, he's like a Dougie Hamilton on the back end, and that if you're not going to utilize the point in that way, like he's firing away, and which Florida really doesn't. Again, we've talked about that before. They do that overload on one of the sides with Barkov and Reinhart and all that. So I think we could see Seth Jones in there, maybe more of a facilitator. So I think he's a spec ad. If he's out there, right, he should definitely be on a roster at this point.
For sure. On the other side, going back the other way, Spencer Knight in a future first-round draft pick. Spencer Knight has to have some interest here because Petr Mrazek has been just completely awful pretty much the entire season, but particularly as of late. Arvid Soderblom has been better, but has also not been very good as of late. I mean, Chicago as a team has been just absolutely putrid all year long, basically. So yeah, I mean, Spencer Knight could come in here and they could decide to just see what they got. And Spencer Knight right away, he could get like 2 out of every 3 starts, or he could just be part of like a three-headed tandem that they don't know what to do with. Like, there's a lot of variance potential here where they could decide, like, we don't even want Spencer Knight to be around how bad this team is this year. Let's bring him in
Mhm.
fresh next year. It's all up in the air for me. There's potential for a volume goaltender, and there's potential that this guy barely sees the ice for the rest of the year. How do you see it, Blake?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't have much to add there, but I mean, just from my eyes, I think Spencer Knight should get a good look as the 1A there. I think what's the harm? You've traded for him. Let's see what you've got here. This guy's under contract. He's going to be on the team, so I think I'd like to see him play it out. Arvid Soderblom's played okay. Mrazek, yeah, he stunk all year, and it didn't stop Nate from rostering him, folks. All right, he just had him on his team. He's just happy to be here. But yeah, I like Spencer Knight. But I'm waiting to pick him up. I think he's just going to be a 0G guy to the end of the year.
Yeah. All right, let's get through some more of these. Quinn Hughes tweaked something last game, apparently not related to the previous injury, listed as day-to-day. Obviously, Philip Hronik would be power play 1. It's just getting harder and harder to believe that Quinn Hughes is going to be playing a lot of games down the stretch here. I mean, as long as Vancouver's in the playoff race, like, he's going to try to play through everything and anything. That's pretty obvious, but yeah, if the ceiling might not be there. I mean, they've traded away JT Miller. Filipino has been good, but obviously not quite the caliber of player of JT Miller. So yeah, it just feels like the ceiling is kind of descending day by day on Quinn Hughes rest of season, which is tough to see after he was having like one of the best seasons we've seen from a defenseman. Especially if you took Gil Makar out of the situation, we'd be talking about Quinn Hughes as unequivocally the best defenseman playing right now. So it's tough to see. I've got Quinn Hughes and Cacuffle, so it's hurting me personally too. We can all commiserate together.
Sorry,
Uh,
Nate.
yeah. Gustav Nyquist traded to Minnesota. That's of interest. Went straight to line 1, but power play 2 in his first game there. Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy, the other two on that top line. That's definitely going to be helpful for Minnesota in terms of creating some offense. It didn't quite work out that way in this particular game, but I definitely foresee that that should be helpful. Gustav Nyquist can still be a reasonable top 6 winger. I don't know that he's like a true top line talent necessarily, but at least he's an upgrade over what they got going, and I wouldn't expect it to take too long for him to unseat Vinny Hinostroza from the top power play either and get back up there at least while Eriksson Ek is out. Speaking of Minnesota, Jonas Brodin, week to week. Yeah, Blake wrote it here. The Wild are trying to break the man games lost record. But Bill Guerin did say he does expect both Cheek and Cap back for the regular season. Obviously, whether that comes in time to be relevant for fantasy is another question entirely, especially if your playoffs end before the end of the regular season for the NHL. We're still pretty up in the air on all of that. Brett Marchand missed today's game here on Sunday with an upper body injury. He traveled with the team, going to be reevaluated on Monday. Elias Lindholm took the spot on power play 1. Macklin Celebrini had a lower body injury at practice. That doesn't work at all.
That's not. You got to say low e body NG.
Yeah, that I just
The
I
alliteration.
think we should just keep it with the uppy.
All right, that's fine. Yeah.
Leave the lower. It doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same way. But Celebrini's game time decision for Monday. Traveling with the team there. Don't think it'll be too much of something, but yeah, you're always worried at this point about any, nagging injury. This is the part of the year where it is tough. You think about a guy like this who hasn't played an 82 game schedule before, especially not in the NHL against big, heavy players this way. Yeah, it could be something to monitor. It could be a situation where it does affect his production moving forward. So keep that in mind. Jake Sanderson, day to day after taking a cross check in the neck. No updates yet, but keep your eyes on that. Obviously, Thomas Chabot would be in line for some more work, power play work there. If Sanderson did miss time, Riley Smith was held out of the game Sunday for trade related purposes, so the Rangers aren't done yet. I don't know who really wants Riley Smith. I think that's more just moving somebody out so they can fit somebody else in cap wise. But yeah, it's worth noting at least that the Rangers don't appear to be done yet. We did also get word on Roman Yossi's officially week to week was placed on IR. So at least we have some sort of idea of what's going on there. But week to week is not what you wanted to hear either. That being said, if he misses a stretch here and comes back for the fantasy playoffs, that might not be the absolute worst case scenario for Roman Yossi. So hopefully he's back in that time. Anything to add here, Blake?
I'm just ready to get into these hot shots. Oh my gosh.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into the hot shots. We're keeping it crisp here. Now, we're going to try to add the Would You Rather segment, so we're going to keep it clean. 5 specific teams or players that we're going to look at here with the hot shots and the have nots. Now, right off the top, Clayton Keller is the guy that I want to look at. This guy has been absolutely on fire. 5 games since the Four Nations break. He's got 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. Yeah,
Real.
just absolutely unbelievable stuff. 36 shots per 60, 23rd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 9th Corsi, 4 per 60, second scoring chances, 4 per 60. He's doing the thing. Now on pace for 30 goals and 94 points is Clayton Keller. Did you foresee these heights as possible for Clayton Keller this year, Blake?
I mean, I think it was always possible, but it's kind of one of those things until you see it, it's really hard to kind of project such a big jump. Like this guy had 76 points last year, 80-point pace. Now he's on a 94-point pace. So he's really feeling it, but it seems natural. Like the things that he's doing there, it doesn't seem unsustainable in my opinion. Like he's really, really cooking on the power play. That's something that's really taken off for him. He's already got 28 power play points this season in just 60 games, where he had 30 last year in 78. So yeah, I mean, Clayton Keller, if you picked him up, that's amazing. This guy's on one for sure. And like, again, one of the things that Clayton Keller does so well, he drives play, right? He's the guy on that line who's making things happen, right? He's bringing it in, he's setting up chances, and he's elite at that. Plus, he's a great skater. Just his overall offensive contribution is huge for his line. So I think I don't see any reason why that would change moving forward. Utah is in a hunt for that wild card spot, so they're going to be trotting this guy out for big minutes.
Yep. Yeah, not much to add there. It really does look like he's just kind of gotten better across all facets here.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten better at even strength. Power play's been better. I think Dylan Guenther has made a big difference on that front, so that's helping Keller out a little bit as well. But I don't see this as truly unsustainable, honestly, looking at the underlying numbers here on the season. 82% IPP. The year before, he was at 81%, right? The year before that, 78%. This is what Clayton Keller does over there in Utah. So I don't think there's a whole lot here that I would see as unsustainable. 13.3% shooting percentage, 12.9% on ice shooting percentage. I think that's in the wheelhouse for him. So yeah, kudos to Clayton Keller there. Let's move over to St. Louis. Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas. These guys have been cooking as of late. Buchnevich, 5 points in his last 5. Robert Thomas, 6 points in his last 5. Yeah, getting a little bit more ice time. Buchnevich, 17 minutes, 45 seconds. Robert Thomas, a little over 15. Neither of these guys have terrific underlying numbers or really have at any point this season, but at least we're kind of getting a little bit more of what we expected, particularly out of Buchnevich at this point. Buchnevich was not rostered in a lot of spots, now has crept up over the 50% marker over the weekend here, but talk to me about St. Louis. It's been a tough go for St. Louis, but I do think that they are, in better hands with Jim Montgomery. Do you expect this to continue even if St. Louis, can't really make a real run at the playoffs here?
It's hard. I have a lot more faith in Robert Thomas than I do Pavel Buchnevich. Sure. I feel like Buchnevich is the trigger man, the de facto trigger man on that line, but he still doesn't shoot very much. He's just really efficient. And this year he hasn't been as efficient as he has been in the past. Buchnevich certainly has been better as of late, but I mean, not in the goal scoring department, right? In the last 5 games, he's shooting 7.7%. So I mean, that should go up a little bit, but his on ice shooting percentage is sky high, right? So, who are they playing with at even strength? Is it Jake Neighbors that these guys are playing with? Because
It
he's been,
was before today's game. I
oh,
haven't
yeah,
seen today's game yet.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, Jake Neighbors has had a nice little resurgence here in the last couple of games too. But
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm picking St. Louis Blues, I'm much more comfortable with Robert Thomas. Again, he's the guy driving offense there. Buchnevich is in they're in that motorcycle with the sidecar. Thomas is he's riding the bike. Buchnevich in the sidecar. Jake Neighbors I don't even know. He's like waving from the house. He doesn't know what's happening. Hey, neighbor. But yeah, Buchnevich is never a guy I'm excited about. St. Louis is a tough team to get into as well, just because
Yeah.
it's just, even with the new head coach, it's still just massive efficiency. Like looking at their numbers here at 5-on-5, they're 7th in the league in terms of conversion, but they're 29th in the league in expected goals for, and that's according to JFresh model there. So yeah, they're overachieving massively, just being really efficient. And what happens when the puck stop going in, right? And that's not something I want to bank on, and that's why I don't really get into these type of players.
Yeah, also worth noting, St. Louis, not a great playoff schedule, no matter when your playoffs are. So, fewest off nights, I think, of any team
Ew.
in either 22 through 24 or 23 through 25. So, it doesn't help you much in that regard either. Let's head over to Philadelphia, talk a little bit about Matvei Michkov. He's got 3 goals, 8 points in his last 5, just over 16 minutes. Average time on ice, 4th in the league in shots per 60, 40th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 91st Corsi, 4 per 60, 44th scoring chances, 4 per 60. Now on pace for a 26 goal, 61 point season is Matvei Michkov across 82 games. Tell me what your status is on Michkov. I've said in the past that I fully believe in Matvei Michkov's talent, but I fully disbelieve in John Tortorella's willingness or ability to deploy Matvei Michkov as he should for fantasy purposes, at the very least. Is anything changed to you? Do you think this hot streak makes him a little bit more immune to Tort's wrath?
Potentially, but I mean, Torts does things that don't make sense to fantasy managers, right? He's one of those coaches where you're like, what the hell are you thinking, man? Oh my God. So, it's same old story. If you have Michkov on your team, you're happy. You're happy with the production here as of late. I feel like, yeah, there's a better chance he's going to get minutes when he's out there doing offensive stuff. But we know that this is a player that's still trying to figure it out defensively. And that's going to hurt him in terms of deployment at some point, right? If and when these goals stop going in, he's going to be riding pine, right? Like, I mean, he could go from 60 minutes a night to benched, or up in the press box, right? Torts does
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, I mean, that's why I don't have any Michkov on my team, on any of my teams, but this is a really, really exciting player. And I'm stoked that he's on pace for 60 points or 61 points. That's excellent in terms of the limited deployment he's had. I wish he was on another team. I honestly do. Like, man, we could see a 90-point guy if he's out there getting 20 minutes. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take, but yeah, same old thing. You got Michkov, you're loving it, but I mean, don't get too comfortable with the production.
Yep. Agreed there. Worth noting, I mean, this will be the 3rd straight season, assuming that the Flyers don't pull something off here and make a push and somehow squeak into the playoffs, but feels unlikely considering the number of teams they'd have to get past. Assuming that doesn't happen, it'll be the 3rd straight season that Tortorella misses the playoffs with Philadelphia. They've been basically right around a 500 record through all 3 seasons with a varying cast of players. I think there's a decent chance that the Flyers move on from Tortorella after this season as coach, and that might be the time to be super invested in Michkov, because I do think as soon as next year we could be looking at a 90-plus point guy. Moving over to Columbus, the recent winners of the outdoor game. I don't know. I
Awesome
didn't
game.
get to see really any of it. I saw some of the preamble and how jacked up the Columbus players were for this game.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of emotional significance around the Gaudreau family being at the game, and the players talking about how much that Johnny Gaudreau really would have loved the kind of spectacle of that game.
Yep.
He would have been super excited to be a part of that. So they wanted to win it for him, and they did. Big part of that, Boone Jenner, Kent Johnson, these guys are going off on the
Yeah.
second line here. Kent Johnson also on the top power play, but Boone Jenner is not. But that's not stopping him from producing. Boone Jenner has 7 assists in 4 games. Kent Johnson, if you add the 5th game there, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in that stretch. Both skating under 17 minutes, just under 17 minutes average time on ice. but getting the thing done. What do you think about this new second line here? Obviously, at some point, we're going to have Monahan coming back. How secure should Boone Jenner and or Kent Johnson rosterers feel?
Uh, Not that secure, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I love that Boone Jenner has come back, just shot out of a cannon. And Columbus is good vibes. It's really good vibes this year. I love the Johnny Gaudreau stuff, and they really have something to play for. And I'm so happy for all the players on this team. Like they've been through the shredder. You know what I mean? These guys have been through a wood chipper. So to see them succeeding the way they are is excellent. And their top line, like Marchenko, Voronkov, and Monahan or Fantilli, that's the best offensive line in the league. I've read that in like a bunch of different spots, like Money Puck and things like that. They are the best offensive line in the league. So the thing with Columbus, though, and Kent Johnson and Boone Jenner are right along with this. They're converting at an insane rate. They're number one in the entire league in their finishing, right? But their expected goals for 23rd. So they're just having a magical season. Werenski is put the team on his back. He's driving everything. And, we're having a breakout season for Marchenko, all that stuff. But yeah, sorry, I'm digressing on the Blue Jackets there. Boone Jenner, I think, 7 points in 4 games. That's nice. That's not really sustainable. I think some of the assists go away. He's more of a goal scorer. This guy's a shooter. So it's a little bit unexpected. But in terms of beefers, he's the legend. All right. This guy's a prime rib rump roast. Oh, yeah. Amazing stuff. Very chiseled buttocks to go with his jaw. I don't know where I'm going with that. But without power play one, Boone Jenner is going to be a little bit subdued, right? We're looking at probably 45, 50-point pace for him, which I like to see. But Kent Johnson, this guy is amazing. Like it's a player I've been watching for, a year and a half, I think, just after I talked with Corey Schneider a little bit and sort of delved into some of the things that he does really well. Again, zone entries, chance assists, shot assists, all that. But again, he's being massively efficient this year, and that's going to drop off at some point. I mean, he's shooting 22.5%. It doesn't make any sense. I think this year, based on expected goals, Kent Johnson should probably be at like a 50, 55-point pace, but he's pacing for 75. So take it when it comes, but I feel a lot more comfortable with that top line there in Columbus than I do with Johnson and Boone Jenner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the right take overall. Yeah, I mean, Ken Johnson, 22.5% shooting percentage on the season. Obviously, not going to continue. I went back and looked. He's never been that efficient, even going back to college. This definitely feels like an outlier in his entire profile. I think there's definitely an element of, he's playing with the best players he's ever played with, at least in Columbus on the top power play. So, yeah, he will look more efficient because of that, by virtue of that. Sometimes, players that don't play as much 5v5 but play on the top power play, they look super efficient because they're getting a bigger chunk of their minutes coming with the man advantage, right? So I don't want to totally discount that, but
Yeah.
definitely I think he's vastly outperformed this year, and we should expect some kind of a step back, especially if Monahan does come back at some point, or Jenner comes, the power play starts to stutter at some point, and they decide that Kent Johnson is the guy that they move off, which does feel like the most likely scenario. So yeah, there's that to Kent Johnson, but as long as he's feeding you points, you're not going to drop him. You're not going to make any rash decisions. I just think you shouldn't get too comfortable here. Same goes for Boone Jenner, especially considering line 2 power play 2, right? It's possible that he moves up, but with Monahan coming back at some point, it feels like he's got multiple hurdles to really overcome to get to power play 1, to the point where he'd be much more than a streamer level player in most 12-team leagues. Yeah, if you're in a Bangers Cats, then he does have utility outside of that. In the 4 games, he's got 7 hits, 6 blocks, so he's definitely doing that upon return to the lineup, and we love to see it. Let's head over to Dallas. Things are happening in Dallas right now, including back-to-back, 4-point games for Rupe Hintz. He's got 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points in his last 5. Now, Jason Robertson has 5 goals, 9 points in his last 5. Wyatt Johnson has 5 goals, 8 points in his last 5. Thomas Harley has a goal and 5 assists for 6 points in his last 5. Things are happening. Jason Robertson is first in the league in individual scoring chances 4 per 60 and on-ice scoring chances 4 per 60 in that span. Still only 16.5 minutes average time on ice for Hintz and Robertson. Johnston gets up over 18 by virtue of his penalty killing role. Talk to me about Dallas, what you're seeing, how sustainable you think this is. Talk to me about what you expect from these guys rest of season.
Well, it's all about the power play here in Dallas right now. And this is a power play that has been pretty damn stinky all year, right? They even into last year, they were doing the 1A, 1B power play. And I think with injuries to Sagan and, other guys there, they've really kind of prioritized the top power play, and putting the injury, to Miro Heiskanen has been kind of a boon for this power play here, because Thomas Harley has got that spot. And then you throw Matt Duchene on the top power play, and now we're looking at an elite unit here. It's insane. Like I dug in on their last 10 games. They're 57%. Their power play is 57% in the last 10 games. There's 6 of their last 6 power plays they've scored on. It's crazy. They're popping off. So obviously 8 points in 2 games for Rupe Hintz. No, that's not sustainable. You got to look at the minutes here as well. They're still doing that. He's spreading the minutes out. Pete DeBoer doing that. So, don't expect this kind of production from Hintz, but we know, and you've talked about this a lot in the past, Hintz is a great power play performer. He really drives play on the power play. Sometimes he's not in on the points, but his on ice numbers on the power play historically have been epic, and he's starting to roll again. And I love to see it. Rupe Hintz was a guy that people were talking about dropping halfway through the season. Like, do I hold on to Hintz? Like, no, yeah, you definitely hold on to Hintz, and he's playing great. J-Rob as well. Geez, I just wish that the deployment was a little better, but we're just looking at a very efficient offensive player. And I do want to shout out, again, 18 Skaters, Mark Barber, his goals, expected goals model has Jason Robertson in the last 2 weeks, number 1 overall in expected goals. He's doing the thing. He's out there crushing, right? But I'd love to see 20-minute J-Rob as opposed to 16-minute J-Rob. But, it is what it is. There was also a quote that came out that Jason Robertson said, like, he probably won't be 100% healthy this year. And obviously his foot surgery that he dealt with going into the season, that really affected his focus and, speed and all that stuff. So that's the reason he got off to such a slow start. But I love that this is actually the player he is. We weren't wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
when we saw how good he was, we weren't wrong for picking him up, in the first round last year or 2 years ago. And then, maybe the second to third round this year. He's still that guy, and I love to see it. And I think Thomas Harley is an absolute stud. This guy, I think he's good enough to hold on to that power play when Heiskanen comes back. And I think they should really do that, because we saw what it looked like. We see proof of concept now, and Harley's really feeling it. I think the Four Nations was great for him. So yeah, I'm really into the Dallas Stars right now. And then Wyatt Johnston, my God, the guy got a hattie. I'm not going to talk too much on him, but this is a guy that generates scoring chances at an elite level, and he's really feeling it right now. So things are good in Dallas right now.
Yeah, really good in Dallas. Talked about Robertson being first in individual scoring chances, 4/60. Johnston's at 15th, so he's right there as well. And that's including all that shorthanded time that he's getting. So you can imagine it could be even better for him. If you look at the season-long point bases at this point, Rupe Hintz, 35 goals, 69-point pace, nice. Jason Robertson, 34-goal, 82-point pace. Wyatt Johnston, 29 goals, 75-point pace.
Love it.
This is about where we figured these guys should be,
Yep.
right? Like it's within the range now at the very least. The real question would be, if Jason Robertson had started the season on time and had been totally healthy coming in, what would we be looking at? Would he be on pace for 100 points this year? And I think that's totally possible and something to keep in the back of our minds for next year as well. All right, that's enough hot shots. Let's talk about the Apples and Gems Patreon for a moment. $2 a month gets you access to patron-only live shows. There will be a new one coming out, not this week, but next week, if you are interested in signing up for that. For $8 a month, you get access to the patron-only live shows and patron-only Discord channels. You will get the show notes for the weekly waiver wire segment and also this flagship show here. You'll also get access to the Apples and Gems player evaluation tool, which will give you the last 5 games data that we're always talking about and the season-long stats as well. And then for $15 a month, if you are a true degenerate when it comes to fantasy hockey, the Genos tier exists solely for you. It gets you all the previous perks mentioned, plus I will personally answer every single one of your questions, guaranteed. Blake, it's time for the have-nots.
I'm excited, but I should say before we carry on here, hockey-related news here. Now, you don't have to. Don't worry, Nate. I'm not getting into it. Jack Hughes had a bad injury here. Looks like in the game.
Ooh.
I just want to throw that out here. He took a hard spill into the end boards and like his shoulder. It was like dangling, and then he went down the tunnel. So just a piece of news that I wanted to throw out there that could really throw a wrench in some people's fantasy stuff there. That's an ugly. It was an ugly injury, and I think he's probably going to miss some time. I don't know how much.
Yeah, that is tough, especially because I don't remember offhand which shoulder it is, but Hughes
Yeah, I
has
read it
dealt with
wasn't
shoulder
his.
stuff.
It wasn't the one that he injured.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
the other one.
Okay. I don't know if that's better or
No,
worse in
I
the
don't know
end,
either.
but
Yeah, at least he's
none
got
of
his
it's good.
legs. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Dear God.
None of it's good for sure, but yeah, hopefully Jack Hughes is not out for too long. Let's talk about these have-nots. I mean, we can't start this segment without talking about Steven Stamkos. What is it, 13 straight games now without a point for Steven Stamkos? Yeah, it's unbelievable at this
Yeah.
point how truly atrocious Steven Stamkos' production has been. This is 18 and a half minute a night Steven Stamkos over the last 5 games. Like, it's not like the opportunity hasn't been there. 135th shots per 60, 225th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 80th in Corsi 4 per 60, and 85th in scoring chances 4 per 60. His individual numbers are lagging his on ice numbers by so much and have throughout the entire season that it really does make me feel like he is the problem in a lot of these cases. Uh, yeah, whether or not he should have better results, even with him being the problem, is definitely arguable. I don't think the 13 game scoreless streak is something that you expect out of any player getting any kind of power play one time the way that Steven Stamkos has, but it is really, really bad for him right now. If you had to handicap the rest of season point pace for Steven Stamkos, where would you place it right now? Give me an over under and I'll tell you which way to go.
All right. I mean, right off the bat, over under. I think maybe 50 points, 50-point pace. Steven Stamkos. I mean, where are you at?
Yeah, I was hoping you weren't going to go there. Um, that is probably the right line, to be honest with you. I I want to take the over because it's Steven Stamkos and the name
Yeah.
means something to me still, but really that's all that I'm looking at to suggest that he should be over that. The one thing with Steven Stamkos too is Nashville does have a decent playoff schedule, so like there's that aspect of it where if you're kind of sewn up your bye or something like that and you're just kind of looking ahead and wondering what you should be doing for your playoffs, then it could be not the worst thing to think about that. Um, it's really tough with Steven Stamkos. I think I would still take the over 50. I feel like he can get to 51, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, bold.
it's not a sure thing by any stretch of the imagination at this point. Like I feel like the
Yeah.
way that he's been performing, it's a minor league miracle that he's still getting the ice time that he is. They just don't have anybody else in Nashville either. Is kind of the problem too, right? So that's where we're at with Steven Stamkos. It's ugly times. Yeah, if you're in a really good playoff spot and you want to just kind of stash him, like that's a way you can go and just hope that he magically becomes the Steven Stamkos of old at some point this
Yeah.
year. But I don't think there's anything in the underlying metrics here to suggest that he will.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add on Stamkos, but it's metrics are just down across the board. It's inexplicable actually. This guy had 81 points last year, and now he's pacing for 44. So I feel like there's something we don't know in terms of what's going on there. But when your GM, I don't know if you saw that Barry Trotz told Andrew Burnett, he's like, just try anything, just go ahead. Like he said something along those lines, and so they're just going to throw the lines in a blender, and when that's kind of your game plan moving forward, you know it's not a good situation. So I think like give me like what are you doing with Stamkos right now? So it's if you're in a playoff spot, you're holding to see if he comes out of it, but if you're fighting for a playoff spot, you're dropping. Is that right?
Yeah, I definitely think you can drop him. Nashville doesn't have a good schedule this week. Stamkos is out there in one of my leagues, 12-team league, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, why am I picking up a guy who hasn't scored in 13 any points in 13 games when he doesn't even have a good schedule versus all these guys who are super hot and creating chances and on power play one as well? Like those guys still exist in my league too, so there's just no reason right now to pick up Steven Stamkos for me. So yeah, if you are in a spot where you're comfortable with your playoff and or buy situation and you want to add Stamkos to, take advantage of that good playoff schedule, then that makes some sense to me. But if you're just looking at right now, you got to be in or out, like, yeah, I don't think you can rely on Stamkos at the moment. Moving over to Chicago, Connor Bedard, pointless in five straight here. Yeah, hitting new lows in Chicago every day. It feels like 22 minutes average time on ice. Like he's being trotted out there every other shift. It feels like, but 272nd in shots per 60, 174 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 293 on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 252 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, 22 goals, 67-point pace for Connor Bedard on the season. Um, it's really rough for Bedard. And the weird part is there are some players who are performing in Chicago right now. Teuvo Teravainen's hot. Ryan Donato's hot. There are a few guys who are kind of popping off a little bit. And it just feels like everything is just orbiting Connor Bedard this year. Even when something breaks right for somebody else, it never breaks right for Connor Bedard himself. And that's just really tough to see. Seth Jones is gone now. That doesn't help things on the back end. Yeah, it's really rough for Connor Bedard. I've viewed him as kind of like a target, to acquire for teams looking to load up for the playoffs because if you're in weeks 22 through 24, there's 7 off nights for Chicago, which is tied with Minnesota for the most in the league. And that's obviously a really good spot to be, or also way up there in weeks 23 through 25. But I don't even know how confident I am in that anymore. Obviously, we know the guy has the talent, but will it come together at the right time for fantasy managers? Blake, that's your cue.
I don't know, man. This is yeah. I was a big fan of picking him up as well. I think that it makes sense. I'm still doing that if I can. I mean, your trade deadlines are probably done, but this is I trust the talent of the player, but it's bad vibes around Bedard in particular. Like, how do you? They just won a game 6-3, and he doesn't get in on one goal. He's
Yeah.
-2, right? They get caved in terms of Corsi for percentage just off of frozen tools here. Yeah, they had a 36% Corsi for percentage against the Ducks. So their line was getting smoked. Meanwhile, Ryan Donato, Toivo Teravainen, they're cooking out there. So it is concerning. It's certainly concerning with Bedard. I'm wondering if some mental stuff is sort of creeping in there with Bedard, like sort of testing his mental fortitude. Like we've seen the clips, right, of him in the penalty box, just staring blankly, not
Yeah.
not having a good time. And now Seth Jones is gone, and probably Ryan Donato is going to be gone, and who the hell knows who else. So, yeah, it's kind of a write-off season. I still think that this is a guy that's going to be valuable for you, come playoff time, but the metrics are down too. It's even strength, right? And it's the same problem that they had last year. Who the hell is he playing with? You got to get this guy a winger, and not Tyler Bertuzzi, all right? Not Andreas Athanasiou. Yeah, he's going to make the big difference. No, we need a guy in here. You need like a Mikko Rantanen, right? You need like a player of that caliber. You need like another star in here to really unlock Bedard. I think. I mean, I compare him just this season to like Macklin Celebrini and what's been going on there. Like Celebrini has good young stars to play with. I
Yeah.
think guys that are really offensively minded, whereas Bedard doesn't have that. Like none of these guys. I'm looking at this lineup. This is ugly.
Mhm.
So, yeah, temper expectations. I think 60 to 70 point pace. Bedard rest of season is probably where he lives, but the potential is so much more. It's really disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, really disappointing, but yeah, I would expect some good things this offseason. They cannot go into next season with anything resembling the train wreck that this season was. So I do
Spend
expect
some
them to
money.
make some big moves. Yeah, Chicago, like it's a pretty decent market franchise. They should be willing to pony up and go after some of the big names that will be out there this year. Yeah, it is worth thinking about. Chicago goes for Tyler Bertuzzi, San Jose goes for Tyler Toffoli. Imagine the swap on those two and how
Yeah,
different a couple
wrong
of these
Tyler.
seasons might have gone. It is worth thinking about for sure. All right, let's move over to Carolina. Seth Jarvis, just 1 goal in his last 5, still skating 20 minutes a night, 183rd in shots per 60, but 36th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 60th Corsi 4 per 60, 39th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60, 35 goal, 70-point pace on the season for Seth Jarvis. The kind of interesting wrench that's been thrown into this thing here is that Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov was a line that was put together. Didn't look too bad. Seth Jarvis obviously still on the top power play, but if the Svechnikov, Rantanen, Aho line sticks together for any length of time, it does feel like Seth Jarvis could get thrown to the Wolves a little bit in terms of his line mates. How does that make you feel about the rest of season outlook for a guy like Seth Jarvis, Blake?
I actually don't have any concerns about Seth Jarvis. He can play on that third line. Like they've played him with Martinuk and Jordan Stahl before, and he likes it. Jarvis likes it. I think as long as he's power play one, I think we're still good to go. We're looking at a 70-point pace for Jarvis. And he just had a monster game here today. And, part of that was he did get bumped up to the top line. He played with Mikko Rantanen and Sebastian Aho today. I didn't see exactly when in the game that was, but he spent some time on that line here today. And I think he's a very valuable player. And, when you dig in on some of the micro stats and things like that, this guy balls out. He's crazy, like big time shots, big time chances. So he's driving offense individually. Plus, he's great with his zone entries and chances and all that stuff. He's a great skater, great forechecker. I really have no concerns with Seth Jarvis. It's a little bit of a cold spell, but I think Carolina just in general has had a cold spell. And it's weird. The addition of Mikko Rantanen to this team, they're still doing the thing. They're still crushing in their Corsi for percentage, right? Like Carolina does. And Rantanen is playing really well, but the conversion's not there. And I think, it's just you get a player with that kind of gravity in there, trying to figure out, his teammates' tendencies and things like that. It's going to take a little while, but I'm not too concerned about Jarvis at all. And I think Rantanen's going to be really good moving forward as well.
Yeah, tend to agree there. I'm not too concerned about Seth Jarvis with this recent cold stretch. Probably just evening out some percentages along the way here, and we should expect him to be back to business as soon as the next game. All right, Brock Faber next up here. 1 assist in his last 5, almost 27 minutes average time on ice in the 5 games here. 159 shots per 60, 98th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 104 Corsi, 4 per 60, 79th on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Pretty in line with his season long numbers, if we're being honest. The interesting part about Faber is that he has been on power play 1 throughout pretty much all of this stretch here for Minnesota, replacing Jared Spurgeon. And obviously, Minnesota has that sweet playoff schedule that we've been talking about for weeks at this point. So, Brock Faber, not scoring points, is on power play 1, does have a great playoff schedule. What do you do, Blake?
You got to have him. All right. You have to have him. There's no one else in Minnesota, but obviously we have to temper expectations. We've talked about it before. It's a slog in Minnesota right now. They're struggling to score goals. They just won 1-0 here tonight. Congratulations, boys. So, and Faber himself, he had 47 points last year. That was based off of huge efficiency for him, but also big minutes deployment. He had power play 1 for most of that season. It's kind of a similar year here for him, but he's just not an offensive defenseman. He's not, right? And they normally, when the team's healthy, the Wild have players to bring the puck in, to set things up. Like Faber's just required to bring the puck out efficiently and make a good first pass, and he does that really, really well. Plus, he's amazing defensively. You can really trust him in big minutes. But in terms of fantasy and offense, I'm not too interested, right? I think you're picking him up for the opportunity play, the deployment play, and the schedule play. But if he's on a 33-point pace right now, that seems reasonable. Like maybe a 40-point pace. 45 is like absolute ceiling for this period. But I don't know. You're giving yourself a chance, at least if you have players on those teams and they're in good positions. Like you're giving yourself a chance, and I think he's absolutely worth a roster spot for the schedule.
Yeah, I think that you got that right. I think, it's a spot where you got to have him, but you do also have to temper expectations. It's just a player that will open up your roster a lot as well, while providing something. You have to feel pretty confident. Hopefully, Cap is back, Jeek is back, when that really is coming down to the wire for you in the playoff time. And things are just a little bit better of an offensive environment. Nyquist should help a little bit, but I think that basically there's not going to be better players out there for you to have. So Faber's a guy that you probably are keeping around as long as he's holding on to power play 1. Worth noting, though, I want to say about Minnesota, this is all just paving the way for me. Zeev Buium, I honestly don't know how to say
Gotta
this.
be it. Booyah!
Buayum is what it's showing if I Google the pronunciation, but he's not in the NHL pronunciation guide, so I
Okay,
don't
all
know
right, that's fine.
100%. Anyway, this guy is going to be an offensive defenseman and a star on Minnesota. I feel pretty confident about that, and I want to throw his name out there right now for people
You're a
to get
check as
excited
well.
about.
Hey, Nate.
Yurchek,
What
I
about
don't
your
think
check?
has the offensive ceiling that Bouillon has personally, but yeah, they've got some guys on the way, and it's always been a hallmark of these Minnesota Wild teams to have great defensemen. So lots more to come there. All right, lastly, in the have-nots, Jake Wallman. Things have finally fallen off a little bit for Jake Wallman. Just one assist in his last five. Still skating 24 and a half minutes time on ice. 24th shots per 60, but 82nd individual scoring chances 4 per 60. 35th Corsi 4 per 60. 27th on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. It's a 10 goal, 51 point pace for Wallman. He hasn't played in every game, so he's not going to hit those marks. But yeah, it's kind of rounding back into where we thought it might land for Jake Wallman in this role in San Jose that we thought he might get. But what's your take on Wallman now, especially considering the fact that San Jose really does not have a good playoff schedule?
Yeah, I think that's really it. For me, if this was the middle of the season, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, yeah, I'm hanging on to Jake Wallman. This is amazing. The guy's an excellent shot producer from the back end. Big time blocks. If you have any block waiting in a points league or if you're in a category league, this guy's excellent at that. So lots of value here. He's still power play one. He's getting all the minutes there. But, with this terrible schedule, like week 22 to 24, they have 8 games and one of them is on the off night. That
Yep.
stinks. So to me, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it unless you're in a deep league. I think Jake Wallman can easily be dropped, no problem. Like, go scour the wire. What about a guy like Alex Vlasic, who's now running power play one, right? Like, Chicago has 10 and 7. They play 7 off nights. San Jose only has 8 games. So to me,
Yeah.
that's kind of an easy swap to me, but it's not you don't have to do that, right? Wallman should be on a roster. He's a great player and he's performing like a 51 point pace. That's excellent. That's absolutely a career high. He already has a career high, but I don't know. I think he can be an easy drop if you need to get some games in.
Yeah, I think Wellman will still be good for your stretch run here. If you have a bye and your playoffs are weeks 22 through 24, then they do play 3 games in each of weeks 23 and 24. It's really just the week 22 where they play 2 games, 0 off nights. That's really going to hurt you. If your weeks 23 through 25 is worth mentioning, they actually have a decent playoff schedule because in week 25, they actually have a pretty solid schedule overall. So keep that all in mind when assessing Jake Wallman. I would say like the underlying stats still look pretty good for him.
Yes.
So I think that he can help get you there, but you may have to be aware that you're turning to somebody else to get you over the finish line once you reach the playoffs. All right. We've reached the end of the have nots. If we didn't talk about a player that you wanted to hear about, make sure you join me Monday, 8 p.m. EST, where I live stream all about the most puzzling players league wide. I will put out a call in the Apples and Genos Discord server about midday tomorrow. So get your buns in there and yeah, put in any players that you want to talk about, and we will get to biz 8 p.m. EST every Monday right here on the Apples and Genos YouTube. All right, Blake, back by popular demand, it's the Would You Rather segment. This is where I talk about 3 different players at the same position with a similar rostership percentage, and I make you choose and then ridicule your choices. Are you
Oh
ready?
God. Oh, okay. Let's do it. I'm ready,
All
baby.
right. At center, we have Pierre-Luc Dubois, 52%, Logan Cooley, 45%, and Marco Rossi, 45%. Rest of season, assume some sort of cacuffle style points format. What are you doing with these guys?
This is tough, actually. Like, I think Logan Cooley would be the easy answer if he was on power play one right now, but he's on power play two. I expect him to go to power play one, but ugh. And then PLD is power play one, but I kind of expect him to go back down to power play two at some point. So, and Marco Rossi, I'm just not really interested in what's going on in Minnesota there. So, you know what? I'm going to say Logan Cooley for the upside. I think that's the choice I'm going to make there.
Cooley number one. Who would you go number
Yeah.
two
Then
between?
Dubois, then Rossi. That's how I
Okay.
go.
Yeah, I agree. Cooley number one, just because I think the upside is by far the highest there. Yeah, I think think that there's every chance if one of these guys goes point per game for the rest of the season, it's Logan Cooley. I don't think the other two honestly even have a shot to do that, unless they just have just wild percentages the rest of the season.
Yep.
To me, Logan Cooley is the only guy who has a chance at actually like winning you your league of this group, and so that's the reason that I go that route. Rossi's playoff schedule does factor in pretty big for me here. I am pretty interested in that. It will probably come down a bit to whether he hangs on to power play one through the potential returns of Cap and Jeek
Yep.
come playoff time. So that is definitely up for debate, but this is a guy who has pretty consistently scored all throughout this season, been a big part of that team. I think I would take Rossi just for the playoff schedule at this point, but it is very close between him and PLD. All right, at left wing, I've got Quentin Byfield, 44% rostered, JJ Paterka, 38% rostered, and Tyler Toffoli, 37% rostered. What say you, Blake?
Oh my. You know what? I'm gonna go. I'd love to take Byfield, but he's been it's kind of been weird power plays over there lately. He's not getting the full power play treatment, and without that, I don't want to rely on a guy that's not shooting and generating a ton of chances. So I think I'm going Paterka first. Paterka first. It sounds cool. Paterka first. Gefilte fish. That's what it reminds me of. I don't even know what that is, but yeah, JJ Paterka. He's line one, power play one right now. Decent minutes, so I'm a fan there. Probably go Byfield second because of the playoff schedule, and then Tyler Toffoli is I would take in a bubble over Byfield, but I don't like the San Jose schedule, so that's how I'm going. Paterka, Byfield, Toffoli.
Yeah, I think that's potentially the right way to do it. I would clarify for myself, like if you're just scrapping to make the playoffs right now, then to me Toffoli over Byfield to get you there, and then you figure it out in the playoffs. Yeah, if this is just an option like waiver wire options for you right now, and you're trying to figure out who's gonna get you the most points between now and the start of the playoffs, just to get you there, then I think Toffoli. Actually, I'd take Toffoli over Paterka as well, just to get you there. Um, to that point. But then, yeah, you will have to contend with the fact that it's a truly terrible playoff schedule for San Jose. So, yeah, if you're in a spot where you're a little bit more comfortable, then I do agree. I would take Paterka first. Feels like he's really rounded into form here and kind of settled in on that top line. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points in his last five over 19 minutes. Yeah, it feels like he's kind of settled in there again towards the back half of this year. So Paterka first, Byfield second, and Toffoli third if you're sitting pretty for playoffs.
Oh, damn, this guy jacks you up. Nate, you're getting me there right now. Oh, my God. Thank you, buddy, for that. Sorry, let's carry on.
All right, let's move over to the right wing. Nick Schmaltz, Ken Johnson, Troy Terry, a few Apples and Geno's faves that we've talked about once or twice here over the last couple of seasons. Schmaltz at 27%, Ken Johnson 24%, Troy Terry 22%. What do you have, Blake?
Ooh, oh, man. You know what? Oh, this is a tough one, actually. I think it's between Schmaltz and Terry for me as the number one. I think I'm going to go with Nick Schmaltz. I think I want to ride with Nicky Schmaltz. You know, and Terry's good as well, but I think Nick Schmaltz is an elite facilitator, and I think that Utah is flying right now. Nick Schmaltz at 5-on-5 looking great with his line, and then he's on the power play where these guys are cooking as well. He gets access to Dylan Gunther. Oh yeah, Dylan, you son of a. So yeah, I'll go Nick Schmaltz, Troy Terry, who we love, and then Ken Johnson. We talked about him, and he's just massively efficient. It's a great story, but he's not really holding a candle to these boys.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. Terry and Schmaltz feel very similar to me. Schmaltz just has like these like lights out moments throughout the season where he turns off for 5 games, and that could feel really bad at this time of year. So if you want a little bit more consistency, maybe you want to go the Terry route. But yeah, it's definitely very close between the two. Anaheim in the weeks 22 through 24 plays 9 times with 4 off nights. Utah is 10 times with 3 off nights. So a little bit potato there, but It's definitely a worthy conversation. Kent Johnson might stay hot for the next little bit. You could hope on that for sure, and I don't think you'd be necessarily wrong to do so. But this week they play 3 games, one off night. Then the week before playoffs, it's 3 games, zero off nights. It's not the greatest schedule for the next 2 weeks either. So if you're scrapping to get in there, then I would go with the other two guys, even though Kent Johnson has been so hot of late. All right, moving over to defense. Philip Roenick, 44% rostered, and then two guys who are half of that rostership: Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 22%, and Sean Durzi, 22%. I want to just kind of highlight this because I think it's kind of ridiculous how different these three guys are in terms of rostership. Obviously, if Quinn Hughes is out for any time and Hronik is actually going to run some power play one for a length of time, then that would be a reason for him to be up this high. But he was here long before there was any concern about that. So Philip Hronik, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Sean Durzi, rest of season, go.
Alrighty. I think I got to go Hronik first, but that's more like these are all power play two guys, and Hronik is not even really sniffing power play. Like if Quinn Hughes is healthy, he's taken a lot of that second power play time as well, right? He's taking a little bit, he's buffering it, and then he's getting off. So that said, though, Hronik is getting the most minutes here, and Vancouver has a great schedule. Plus, I don't trust, like we said earlier, that Quinn Hughes is even going to finish the season. If Canucks keep free falling and they get out of the playoff spot here, I could absolutely see them shutting Quinn Hughes down. Because why? Why do we need to trot this guy out there, and further his injury? So I'll take Philip Hronik first. I'll probably go Durzi second because I love Sean Durzi. Actually, I was big on that player in the offseason. I thought he might actually take power play one from Mikhail Sergachev, and he probably would have, but he got injured, right, Nate? So yeah, I love the offensive acumen of Sean Durzi. He's really good at blocks too. So there you go. And then OEL, just never a player I'm going to be interested in for fantasy. I'm just not. I'm not about it. So that's what I'm doing there. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I think that Hronik is probably the correct answer just because of the potential of Power Play 1 that he has over these other two guys. And yeah, he does have more minutes. I think he's less effective in those minutes for fantasy purposes than the other two
Sure.
guys. Um, so yeah, kind of take that for what it's worth, I guess, at that point. Sean Durzi, it is a little concerning to me that his minutes are not higher. Like he's under 20 minutes average time on ice through these 5 games. There's probably some reasons for that, but it's not an ideal situation to be looking at that number right now. So I do think it is pretty much a coin flip between him and OEL at this stage. Um, OEL, you could argue, is on a team that's more likely to continue some high end offensive production throughout the rest of the season or be a little bit more consistent in that regard anyway. So I could see that argument. I don't think there's a chance either of them are on a power play one outside of injury. Maybe you could say Durzi's only one injury away, where Ekman-Larsson might be two. So maybe that's a reason to go Durzi's way. But yeah, I think it is pretty much just a coin flip between the two. All right, last one, goaltenders. And just for fun, we're going with the super high roster guys. Jake Ottinger, 100% rostered on Yahoo. Shesterkin, 99%. And Vasilevsky, 99%. Rest of season, predicting goalie performance. Go at it, Blake.
This is a lock. All right, folks. I'm taking Vasi number one. I'm going Ottinger number two, and then Shesterkin number three. I think Tampa has the best defensive environment. Plus, Vasilevsky's playing out of his head right now. It's amazing. I think Ottinger. Obviously, Dallas is figuring it out here on the power play, so it's great for him. And then New York, I just don't trust them at all. I feel like Shesterkin's had a down year, certainly to his standards.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to to disagree with any goalie take. I feel like for me, just because as I've said many times, I'm not in the business of making these kinds of assumptions. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for how good Dallas is playing right now, and what that could look like for Jake Ottinger as they kind of round into form here. And their playoff situation, rather, they're kind of they're 8 points back of the Jets. Are they really going to make a huge push in the last 22 games here and overtake the Jets? Maybe, but that would be a huge hill to
Yeah.
climb for sure. But they're also 6 points clear of the Wild as third place in the Central, and so they're kind of locked in the middle. It feels like a little bit. yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of motivation for them to, keep ringing out Ottinger, whereas Shesterkin, like they have to, the Rangers have to win games every single time. It's a huge game for the Rangers rest of season, but I really don't feel that great about how that team's performing right now. Um, Vasilevsky is an interesting one. Tampa's situation, they're in third place in the Atlantic right now, but definitely they feel pretty solid about their playoff stature. They're 8 points up on the Red Wings, who are holding down the eighth spot in the wild card right now. Yeah, I think that you could make an argument in any direction here. There's obviously a reason all three of these guys are 99% or more rostered. But for myself, at the end of it all, I'm going Ottinger first, Vasilevsky second, Igor Shesterkin third.
That's close to correct, Nate. We'll give you that one.
All right, thanks. Lastly, here under the hood, let's talk about Mason Lowry for a minute. Last 5 games, basically since the Four Nations here, 1 goal, 4 assists, 23:01 average time on ice, fourth in shots per 60 amongst all defensemen, 14th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, third in Corsi, 4 per 60, 23rd in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. This is not something I was really expecting from Mason Lowry, to be quite honest with you. I didn't
Mhm.
see it in his profile. This is not a guy who like lit college hockey on fire. This is a 24-year-old guy. It's not like he's been a household name. He was a second round pick, end of the second round pick back in 2020. It's not something that I necessarily saw coming. I knew he was good. I knew he had good offensive instincts. I've seen him play against the Leafs, obviously, a lot of times in the playoffs and stuff. Um, yeah, every once in a while you see him like draw the puck through his legs, and you're like, wow, not a lot of defensemen are trying to make that move, especially young ones. So there's something to that confidence or that swagger, whatever you want to call it, for sure. But I really didn't know that we were going to get this spotlight on him where all of a sudden he's the guy. McAvoy's down, Lindholm's down. He's the guy. He's got to bring this thing home, and he steps up in a huge way, and he's pumping shots. He's delivering all of these offensive chances with the power play one there in Boston. And that was just not something that was on my radar. It is 5 games. It's a small sample at this point, but I am super interested to see, because this does feel like the kind of guy who's just kind of always exceeded expectations at every step along the way so far. And so I am interested to see if he is just that late bloomer, that guy who, oh, you need me to do this now? Yeah, sure. I can pump pump
Yeah.
5 shots a night, all out of the blue. Yeah, I'm just interested to see how far it goes, because yeah, even looking ahead to next year, like McAvoy has not been a power play one savant by any stretch of the imagination. The Bruins tried Lindholm for like a game before Lindholm had his big lung injury that he's dealt with all year this year. So yeah, it's an interesting spot for Lowry. I'm paying a lot of attention. Picked him up in a spot. He's still widely available in Yahoo League, so definitely you might want to look out and go at him if he's still out there in your league. But wanted to shout out Mason Lowry. Small sample size here that we're dealing with, but I am very interested to see how the rest of the season goes for him. All right, Blake, we have one last order of business here. It is to recap the head streamer deathmatch. Unfortunately, I don't even know how to bring this in. Alex Laferriere probably put together the worst head-to-head streamer deathmatch, uh, yeah,
I'm
of all
sorry.
time. 4.75 cacuffle points. Uh, it's just incredible, to be quite honest with you. It's incredible how terrible that Alex Ferrier has been, and it's not like he's been on the top power play.
Yeah, he's a
Yes,
metrics
they've
guy too. He's good.
he looks good under the hood. All of the things that we like to look at here, they all show out for Alex Laferriere until this week, and then he drops one of the absolute worst weeks we've ever seen here on the Head-to-Head Streamer Deathmatch. Does feel like it's been a little bit my luck this year, along with some pretty terrible picks on my part. But Kent Johnson, your pick, obviously has a monstrous week in only 3 games, puts up 17 points. Congrats to you, Blake. Take your bows, say what you need to say.
I got nothing, man. You know what though? I remember last year I got up big in the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. I think I won the first 6 or 7 or something like that. And then you came back. You made it really close, and then I kind of pulled away at the end. But yeah, this hasn't been your year. But I mean, the process is good. That just really highlights to me like how fantasy hockey is it's still luck at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You have a process, and we're also doing 25% and under. This is pretty difficult, man. Although, yeah, I might have found my game here with this 25% and under, Nate. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a format you've shown that you can excel at this year. We didn't talk about it before, but like usually we talk about like, do you have your guy? Do you have your guy? We didn't talk about it. Do you have a
I got a
guy
guy.
for
I
this
got a
week?
guy. Yep,
Okay,
I'm good.
you've got a guy. I think it is your week to pick first, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you
I
pick
think so.
first
Yeah.
on the even number week, so it is your time to pick first. I'm still desperately casting about for who I'm gonna pick, but you go ahead.
Yeah, you do that, buddy. Here, I'm gonna buy you some time. All right, I'll give you. You know what? We'll just do some fun here. Okay, my guy, he's got 6 points in the last 5 games, 297th overall in shots on goal per 60, 299th overall in individuals scoring chances for per 60. Who is he?
Looks like Troy Terry to me.
No way, buddy. I'm taking Ryan Donato of the
Ooh.
Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to have some fun. This is a guy that has not let me down since I streamed him in like 4 weeks ago. And yeah, I'm rolling with my boy here. I love me some Ryan Donato. He'll probably get traded anyway and miss a bunch of games, but that's fine.
All right. Well, if you're going to go that way, I will go back to the well with Troy Terry because that's my guy and he never lets me down except for when he does.
Mm,
So, Ryan Donato versus Troy Terry will be the head to head streamer death match for
let's
the
go
upcoming week.
to the death.
All right. Well, if you made it this far, you should definitely check the description. Click the link there to join the Apples and Geos Discord community. Come talk fantasy hockey with 1,500 plus fantasy managers. Anytime, anywhere you want to talk fantasy hockey, there's somebody in there that'll do it with you. If you've made it this far, you should probably like, rate, review, subscribe, comment. Any or all of those things would be greatly appreciated. That's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helps you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource.
Oh my God.
Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.